Hi, Leo. This is going to be a continuation of my collective reading from the Leo perspective. See what's going on with my Leos. I have a couple cards here out on the table. I'm looking at the goal, whatever we need to negotiate with, the advice for moving forward, and then what Spirit says is your superpower, which is coming through as the Ace of Swords. And the first thing I heard when I pulled out this Ace of Swords was the voice. And I haven't seen Dune. I haven't seen any of the Dunes, but I'm familiar with the Bene Gesserit, the nuns or the priestesses. They have that gift of the voice where they can kind of command reality with their voice. And for whatever reason, that idea has just been coming up and coming up. I know that it was in the Star Wars films with the Jedi, and they could say, these are not the drones you're looking for. But it's something about the voice as a tool that commands reality. It reminds me of a dream that a friend of mine had had years ago. And even though it wasn't my dream, this dream stuck with me, where he had received a sword in his dream. And this sword basically gave him the ability to kind of, I guess, effectively command the Matrix in terms of like when he was moving through his dream, as long as he held this sword, it was like any obstacle just kind of moved out of the way. It reminds me of the idea of having indomitable will. I remember I had seen this. There was this big giant statue to George Washington in a town that I used to live in. And underneath the statue, there was a plaque that says, "This commemorates the indomitable will of George Washington." And I always thought that that was interesting, but it's like, there's something about that with the voice, with whether it's the Jedi concept, the Bene Gesserit, that there's something about that particular way that they vocalize or emote that is indomitable, right? It just, they say it, this will happen, it happens, or you get what I'm saying. And then behind that, the Nine of Rods behind that. So that's kind of giving me the energy of with great power comes great responsibility. Quite frankly, I think one of the reasons why a lot of light workers struggle to activate their powers, myself included, but all of us, is because all of the examples of power that we've been given have not been very healthy. And I think because of that, we're almost intimidated by our own power to a degree. So it's like it's hard to experiment with something like this if you are somebody that's rooted in love and your heart sourced and all of that, right? Because we're not really looking to command anybody aside from the experience that we're having, right? So that's really what this is talking to me about, is that this is not exactly something that's being used on another individual. This is something that's being spoken to the construct itself. It's being spoken to reality itself. And again, so what I'm seeing down on the table for the goal, I have the Wheel of Fortune. And then, well, I'll just start there. So the goal, what we're trying to manifest, is the Wheel of Fortune. And what this talks to me about right now is, so you have the four aces in tarot, right? The Ace of Cups, Wands, whatever. In the major arcana, I would say that the Wheel of Fortune has become like the major arcana ace for me. And another way that you could look at this is almost like the control panel, right? It's like the Wheel of Fortune is the gear that kind of operates the matrix, right? So I'm seeing both of these as kind of being the same thing, where it's like the superpower that you already have is the Ace of Swords, right? So it's like this has been mastered. This is coming up because it's basically saying like this is something in your possession, right? You've already unlocked this. It could just be a matter of integrating it or acknowledging it or something like that. But the goal from your perspective is to have the entire kit and caboodle, which is the Wheel of Fortune, right? Which is basically like all four or five aces kind of integrated together. If you saw my last reading about the last collective reading that I did about the emotional body, there was a whole thing that came up about the notion of the Purple Heart and the Three of Swords kind of being like the fifth element ace in the game, right? And I feel like when you collect all five aces, then you get this Wheel of Fortune. So I'm almost getting a sense of like perhaps maybe even thinking that you have all of the aces, but this one, even though you already have it, right? So there could be an aspect of that there where it's like, this is definitely indicating that you already have it, right? It's coming up in your superpower position of what Spirit wants to remind you of. But the goal is kind of working towards this. So the Wheel of Fortune, the reason why I would say that it's the fifth ace or the ultimate ace that commands reality is because these four characters on the corners here, the what do we have? We have an ox, a lion, an eagle, and an angel. Those are supposed to represent the four gospels, right? And the four gospels, at least from our perspective, would be like the four testimonies or the four witnesses or whatever that are witnessing this experience. They're writing the written account, right? So it's like when you take charge of the Wheel of Fortune, then you can start to write the gospel or the testament or whatever you want to call it. Forgive me for using the religious language. I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible here. What needs to be negotiated with is the Six of Swords, right? So it's almost like I'm almost seeing this as kind of like a tugboat, right? Where it's like trying to tug this Wheel of Fortune across the proverbial Rubicon so that you can get to the other side, which is the manifestation. And the Six of Swords can sometimes talk about like a ginger approach. Is that the right word? Like a gingerly approach, as though, you know, the water might be turbulent, or perhaps you've just left a lot of turbulence. But what I'm really seeing with this is almost, because again, there was an energy of like intimidation or concern coming up with this. Like I was saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's kind of what I'm getting with the Six of Swords as well, where it's like, it's almost like being Oppenheimer, right? Where it's like I have this really powerful technology and I want to use it, but I don't want to use it in the wrong way, right? It's like I want to make sure that I use it carefully. And what the Six of Swords is saying is that it's almost like there's a lot of tower energy in the collective right now, but I'm seeing us going over it again, as if you were taking a flight, and halfway through the flight they would say, like, if you look out the left you can see the Grand Canyon as you're passing over. It's like something like that, where it's like if you look out the left you'll see the tower energy everywhere you look, and if you look out the right you'll see more of it. And that could almost be in your head. It's almost, I'm actually, now I'm getting the visual of like somebody circling the block looking for a parking space, where it's like because of that tower energy it could be like, well, I don't want to use the sword here, right? I don't want to use the voice here. I don't think this is the right spot. But I feel like what this is kind of saying is like you're over it. Like you're not actually in that energy, but you're on top of it. And perhaps that's the best place to start experimenting with this voice, because you can see how the crowd reacts to it, right? It's like whenever I think of the idea of like NPCs or background people or yada yada, my argument is that if those things really do exist to like the full extent of what an NPC could be, then we're probably not socializing with any of them, right? They're most likely, like Dolores Cannon says, the background people. So you're never really engaging with them. You're never really interacting with them. You've never had a 3-hour phone conversation with them. I'm sure there's plenty of people that we think like, oh, that must have been something, but it's different things. Um, in terms of like things that are literally just pure manifestations of the game, I don't think that those are ever going to be things that we actually interact with, because there's nothing to interact with, right? They just kind of fill up the space, which is what I think we're seeing out of the windows of the plane as we pass over the tower energy to the next kind of thing. So those are almost like, that's almost maybe like the easiest thing to kind of experiment with and do a little call and response. And you know, when I put this out, how does the crowd react, right? It's almost like saying maybe you can use that as like a bit of a litmus test or something like that. Because again, it's like knowing my demographic and who it is that's listening to this, it's like all you want is the best for yourself and everybody else, right? So you're not trying to do anything that would be distasteful. And quite frankly, I think if you were, it wouldn't work. And the only reason why you can do it is because you wouldn't do that. So you get what I'm saying. And then the advice for moving forward, the final energy on the table here, is the Four of Swords. And the Four of Swords usually talks about an energy of kind of either going into a retreat or an energy of rest. But in tandem with everything else that's on the table right here, it's like I feel like it's almost it's almost giving me the idea of like how they say sometimes, like, throwing a grenade into the room and then walking away, like something like that. I don't know why I want to say that in particular. Let me pull some oracles just to clarify this. Okay, so it's saying intuition is what's clarifying the Wheel of Fortune. I appreciate all my body does for me is what's clarifying the Six of Swords. And I receive money every day is what's clarifying the Four of Swords. So, okay, so that's helping me tune into this, because I was saying sometimes this can be a rest and retreat energy. And then I was saying something about, throwing the grenade and walking away, or whatever the hell that means. Um, but effectively, what I'm seeing here is like, it seems like every manifestation protocol that there is, regardless of which one you touch, has some sort of element of detachment in the recipe, where it's like you do the thing and then you walk away from it, right? You create the sigil and then you burn it and you walk away from it, or something like that. And that's how the manifestation happens. There's something about that where it's like, I'm almost seeing like, as you're in your plane flying over the tower energy, let's call it your private jet, okay, keep it cute. Um, that there's two options, right? You could either look out the window and get lost in the story that's happening outside of the window and allow the energy of that to affect the voice, or you can close the windows, pop the champagne, and be in the energy that you want to be in. And it's almost like when you reopen the window, right? It's like if you lose yourself in that energy of doing you, by the time you reopen the window, you look outside and the energy is completely different, right? Well, because like literally what I'm seeing when you look out the window is, if you remember Lord of the Rings, the orcs, remember the orcs had like the underground cities or whatever, and they were all around the tower. Was it Sauron's tower or whatever? And he could look out and like see all of these orcs everywhere, and they're like mining and doing. It's like that's what you see, and you're like, okay, close the window, champagne, relax, whatever that means to you, and then lose yourself in the moment. And then by the time you lift it up, it's like, oh, Ten of Cups, rainbows, butterflies. Where did all the orcs go? There's something like that. So I'm going to leave it there, Leo. In my next life, if I have to do a next life, I hope I'm Leo. But I'm happy being a Pisces in this one. But I love you guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Oh, and if you're interested in any kind of personal, there's no extended for this, but I am doing personal readings. So you will find all of that information in the description box below. I love you, love you. Bye.